When you look at your life right now, you may think God is silent, late, or unfair. But what if the tears you cry in secret are the very proof that heaven is still working? What if the pain you hate is the classroom shaping the future you prayed for? Do not doubt God. He is doing more in silence than you can see in sight. God cannot be doubted because He sees what humans cannot. Doubt is born when the eyes become the only instrument of interpretation. But God never governs by what is visible first. He governs by what is invisible and unreported to human senses. When you look at your life, you see events, wounds, delays, denials, betrayals, losses, and unanswered prayers. When God looks at your life, He sees the interior data, the attitude behind every action, the unseen traps He diverted, the character upgrades your pain is producing, the timing windows that are still opening behind the curtain, and the warfare you are not even aware is being fought on your behalf. Doubting God is not merely emotional. It is intellectual arrogance disguised as disappointment because it assumes that your limited knowledge is enough to evaluate His wisdom. If a doctor tells you to trust the surgery process, even when the pain increases, you do not conclude that the doctor is harmful. You conclude he sees things you cannot. If an architect tells you that parts of a building must be torn down before it can be made safe, you do not accuse the architect of destruction. You trust that demolition is part of transformation. If in human systems you allow this level of deference, how then is it rational to withhold it from the one who sees the end before the beginning begins? Doubt emerges when people misinterpret waiting as abandonment, silence as rejection, inconvenience as injustice, and pain as proof of divine distance. Yet in every major divine narrative, the silence phase preceded the visible phase. The seed is most alive when it is most buried. Nothing visible does not equal nothing happening. He sees the private wars of your motives. When you resisted sin in secret and no applause followed. He sees the inner cleanliness you chose at cost. He sees the betrayal that collapsed your confidence, but did not contaminate your character. He sees the opportunities you refused because you wanted righteousness more than results. Humans saw inactivity, heaven saw qualification. He knows when you prayed while shaking, when you forgave while bleeding, when you obeyed while terrified, when you carried dignity though misjudged, when you held on to conviction when compromise was cheaper. Because He sees the unseen, His decisions answer data you do not possess. So when He delays with information. When He blocks with precision. When He reroutes by prior knowledge. When He wounds in order to weld. When He hides to harden the roots before showing the tree. To doubt Him is to demand that He act only at the speed of your comfort and through the logic of your understanding. But comfort is not the architect of destiny. Revelation is. Understanding does not precede obedience. Obedience invites understanding. The classroom of faith begins with trust before clarity. God reads the biography you have not lived yet. He signs off decisions with chapters you have not reached. He times your answers to the seasons you cannot see. If you judge Him from page 4 while He is writing page 400, your verdict will always be premature. Doubt is the fruit of short vision. Trust is the discipline of deferring judgment until the author is finished writing. Therefore, the rational, educated, spiritually intelligent posture is not blind faith, but informed faith. Faith anchored in the fact that the one making decisions has more information than the one experiencing the effects. When you doubt God, you are not questioning His love, you are questioning His intelligence. And no finite creature is qualified to audit infinite wisdom. Trust is not a soft feeling. It is the only logical response once you admit you do not see what He sees. Tears are not signs of weakness. They are evidence that faith is still alive. People only cry for what still matters. You do not shed tears over what you have fully surrendered or no longer expect. Tears exist where expectation is not dead. They reveal that deep inside, you still believe something can change, or should change, or will change. Many assume that crying means that faith has failed. In reality, tears often appear when faith is under pressure, but not yet surrendered. You cry because something in you still refuses to accept that hopelessness is the final state. Tears are not a collapse of belief. They are the protest of belief against despair. Silent tears during prayer are not inferior forms of communication. When the voice is muted, the heart speaks without grammar, without performance, without editing. Spoken prayers can sometimes be rehearsed decorative, or shaped by concern about how they sound. Tear prayers bypass ego and scripting. They expose the raw, unnegotiated truth of the inner man. Heaven reads tears the way a judge reads documented evidence. A tear is data, proof that something within you is still spiritually alive, still responsive, still reaching, still anchored to the possibility of intervention. There are moments when God allows words to dry up so that sincerity becomes distilled. A whispered prayer between sobs carries a purity that elaborate sentences cannot manufacture. Some of the most decisive transactions with God in human experience did not happen through eloquence, but through brokenness. Tears are often the last language before breakthrough, because when your vocabulary is exhausted, your dependence is exposed. Dependence is louder than sentences. Crying in prayer is not an insult to faith. It is a confession of limitation and a declaration of need. You do not cry before someone you consider powerless. You cry before someone you still believe can act, can hear, can reverse, can mend. Even when you say, "I can't take it anymore," the fact that you are saying it to God and not to yourself alone means hope has not resigned. Pain that drives you toward God is not evidence of His absence. It is evidence your soul still knows where to return for oxygen. People often hide tears out of shame, not realizing that heaven treats tears as spiritual currency. Words impress listeners. Tears move the one who reads motives. A tear rolling down in the presence of God is more articulate than a full sermon spoken outside of His will. Silent prayers, the ones you cannot explain to anyone, are the prayers that reshape your interior without audience applause. They are private negotiations with eternity. If tears were weakness, God would have condemned them. Instead, He collected them, recorded them, remembered them. That means tears are archival material in the court of heaven. They testify twice, once about your pain and once about your persistence. They tell heaven, "I am wounded but not withdrawn." They tell darkness, "You hurt me but you did not empty me." They tell your own soul, "Something in me refuses to die." Therefore, to despise your tears is to misread your own progress. Tears do not mean you failed to endure. They mean you are still enduring when you could have quit. Tears do not indicate collapse. They indicate continuation under strain. Tears are not the end of faith. They are often the last protective shield keeping faith from suffocation. When the voice has no vocabulary, tears inherit the burden of confession, and they carry it faithfully to the one who translates silence into answer. Pain is not punishment. It is a classroom where God trains destiny. A life that will be trusted with weight, responsibility, and impact cannot be graduated without the curriculum of pressure. Human beings grow intellectually in libraries and classrooms, but they grow spiritually in losses, delays, betrayals, and disappointments. Pain is God's most honest teacher because it cannot be ignored, negotiated, or faked. Pleasure can lie to you, applause can deceive you, comfort can sedate you, success can inflate you, but pain speaks truth without diplomacy. It exposes what you depend on, what you worship, what you fear, what you expect, and what you truly believe. Divine preparation always begins by stripping the soul of illusions. Before God trusts someone with answers, He trains them to survive unanswered questions. Before He gives visibility, He teaches invisibility. Before He gives a surrender, before He gives fulfillment, He teaches delay. The pain phase is not random, it is targeted. It cuts away confidence in substitutes, people you relied on as saviors, systems you used as security, identities you built from approval, and expectations that were built on imagination rather than revelation. Pain dismantles self-reliance so that faith is not an ornament but oxygen. The greatest error people make in seasons of pain is interpreting as divine anger or abandonment. If God wanted to punish, punishment would not refine, it would destroy. But the pain assigned by heaven does not annihilate, it shapes. You are not shattered to be wasted, you are broken to be usable. Every tool God uses must first be made unbreakable, and unbreakable is not achieved by comfort, it is achieved by pressure. Steel is not strengthened by affection but by fire. Leaders are not formed by applause but by loneliness. Intercessors are not trained by abundance but by nights of desperation. Builders are not prepared by easy paths, but by resistant terrain that teaches endurance. Observe the consistent logic in every calling of way. Pain preceded usability. Joseph was betrayed before he governed. David was hunted before he ruled. Moses was exiled before he led. Hannah wept before she conceived. Paul was blinded before he preached. Even the Messiah himself was made perfect through suffering, which means pain was not incidental even to perfection. It was integral. If the sinless one was not exempt from the classroom of suffering, then pain in your life is not an exception. It is alignment with a universal pathway of preparation. Pain also reorders ranking inside the soul. It teaches what matters after illusions are burned. After certain heartbreaks, you stop chasing validation. After certain losses, you stop idolizing predictability. After certain betrayals, you stop negotiating your identity. Pain edits your priorities more effectively than advice. 1 hour of agony can teach what 10 years of lectures could not. In this sense, pain is not only the classroom, it is also the exam. It proves whether your attachment is to outcomes or to God, to timelines or to trust, to feelings or to faith. The wise do not rush to escape pain, they rush to extract meaning from it. Because once meaning is understood, endurance becomes possible. Pain without interpretation produces despair. Pain with interpretation produces maturity. When you recognize that God is not punishing you but preparing you, the same tears become fuel, and the same delay becomes training, and the same betrayal becomes liberation from wrong alliances. So pain is not evidence that your life is off track. Often it is proof that your life is on schedule. God will never shape greatness in environments of comfort because comfort protects your own self, not your future self. Pain is the divine scalpel, precise, purposeful, painful, but never wasteful. When God trains you through pain, He is not reducing you. He is removing what is too weak to carry what is coming. Doubt collapses when understanding expands. When you finally see that God is operating with information you do not have, reading tears you cannot translate into words, and using pain not as a weapon but as a workshop, trust ceases to be emotional and becomes logical. The God who sees the invisible, hears the inaudible, and uses the unbearable is not experimenting with your life. He is engineering it. Nothing you survive is wasted. Nothing you surrendered in tears is ignored. And nothing you suffer under His hand is without assignment. The silence was not absence. The delay was not denial. The pain was not punishment. All of it was preparation. And when the preparation phase is complete, God never forgets to reveal what He prepared you for. The life that trusts Him through tears is the life He will vindicate in time.